Hey, 420 MSP, Harry here with John Gunn. I met John at the John, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And I just want to give a shout out to something we talk about frequently over here in the community, the RSPA trade group for point of sale resellers. John and I are on a committee, a community, the cannabis community. So I'm glad we met because
Me
I'm
too.
always looking for good tech stories. So, sir, what is FastSensor? What is your story?
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate the time. So, FastSensor is a behavioral analytics company that has its foundational roots in radio frequency tracking. We started in Brazil in 2013, came to the United States, and then have continued to grow and evolve in pursuing retail and cannabis. Okay. And we've got some experience in this space. I kind of want to share our story. We are a very unique company in that our founder is actually a radio frequency expert, a behavioral analytics expert, and in his spare time, he was an attorney as well. Okay, which kind of comes in handy in a
One of
business,
those.
as you might understand, right? So what he did is he invented a technology that broke the mold for what was being used traditionally for what they call people tracking or footfall analytics, and created technology that is based on radio frequency from cell phones. And it has continued to evolve to where we pick up all public spectrum radio frequency. Now, our name is FastSensor, but what we actually are is not about the sensor. It's just a tool for us to gather data. The rest of it's all about what we do with that data. And so he's also a student of psychology and sociology, and he writes behavioral analytics algorithms that make sense of the radio frequency signals that are bouncing around in the air. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but if you walk into any room right now, if you look in your own room, you can actually see Wi-Fi waves and Bluetooth waves and everything bouncing around the room, ricocheting off the walls. He figured out how to put in
I
sensors.
see him. I see him now. Go
I
ahead.
see them now. Yes, exactly. That can measure where something is in three-dimensional space. So he studies the radio frequency using kind of a mesh network and can figure out a position of where something is. And then applying behavioral analytics can learn an awful lot about an environment. So in our case, we're going to talk about advanced analytics that you can use in the cannabis industry, in your retail stores, and your operations. Okay. So
Do it.
Okay. So it's really important to look at your company holistically. It's from end to end, it's made up of people, right? And people are what make the world go round, whether it's a customer, whether it's an employee, whether it's your growers, your suppliers, the people that bring you all the things they do. And we study all of them. And then we've created technologies that not only track them, but also protect them. And so it's a multi-pronged approach. We consider health and safety, and especially during the pandemic, being able to protect your important assets, your employees and your customers, right? And be able to also then help you understand better what's going on in your business. Now, what's interesting is that there are loyalty programs in the world. We've all got one. You may have something with Starbucks or something like that. And all those programs really do is measure the effectiveness of your loyalty app. It doesn't actually measure and create loyalty, right? What you've got 10% of the people that will always use the coupon, right? We all know that because we're consumers, right? So what's left are the people that are the invisible ones that you don't know. And everybody believes that the story of a store is all about revenue, and it's not. It's actually about culture. It's also about the environment. It's about the experience. And when you can see the experience from your customer's perspective, then it opens up your eyes a lot more. You cannot measure what's going on in your store based on revenue alone. Okay. You need to actually study it. Imagine if you could put three guys on the roof with clipboards and note everything that everybody does. We can do that without having three guys standing on the roof. We just study anonymously the radio frequency in the air. It's all private. It's perfect. If you've got a cannabis dispensary that's pure medical, this is not going to infringe on anybody's rights. We are GDPR and CCPA compliant. We're also in Canada, Australia, every country you name, we're compliant. Okay. That's really important to who we are. And that's what the logos are there at the bottom. Okay. So foundationally, this is very brief. We were reviewed and discovered in the UK by a company that studies footfall analytics, and they compared all the technologies in the world and then positioned them and said, here's what we know about them. Okay. What's interesting is that we didn't know about this. We found out afterwards, and we bought a copy of the report so that we could share it. But essentially, we were so unique in the world that they actually positioned us up here. It's called Vector Radio Frequency Trilateration, and they wrote our name on it, FastSensor, because it's that unique. Okay, that's all I'm really going to say. You've heard of beacons, Wi-Fi's, computer visions with cameras. You may have been exposed to it in your prior life or in your current one. This is different. Okay, that's all we're really going to talk about. I want to burn your brain with all that. Okay. Now, what's important is that we can help you across your business. There's two aspects of it. It starts from growing and cultivating and all the way through the supply chain to where packaging to factories, getting it in your store, testing. All those things are all part of the food chain that you require to keep your business up and running. And the first part of that is safety and also workflow analysis. Now, from the safety perspective, we have created tools that will measure the distance between two objects that we can use to keep your employees safe. They vibrate, haptic vibration, and remind you to just stay away from each other. And if you spend too much time together, then basically write it down.
The watch vibrates.
Yes. Oh, it does. Yeah. And I have, I'll actually break one of them out and show you in a second. So okay. What they do is they vibrate and remind you to step back from each other. And if you do it too much and following the CDC guidelines, it's 15 minutes over a full 24-hour period. We think that's a little too long. So we'd set it at 3 minutes out of the box. And all we do is record that information anonymously. It's got your like a badge number. And if somebody gets sick, you can contact trace and you can stop it and you can keep your operation running, because you could lose millions of dollars if your operation is shut down. So
well, John, let me, sure. If you don't mind, let me interject. I mean, this is great. And you always do bake my brain every time we talk. But on that last point, I live in a little seaside community in the Seattle area, and I go for my walk, and the little wine bar, food and wine, had a note that 2 employees tested positive for COVID. So we had to shut down even takeout. To your point, they didn't lose millions, but I bet they felt like they lost millions over the last several days. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they shut down.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the reason why is because we don't know who's sick, right? If you had an opportunity to know who they came in contact with, which is what contact tracing is all about, then it makes it easier for you to say, okay, this person was with these 2 people. Let's isolate them. You guys go on quarantine, get tested. Let's clean all the surfaces and keep going, right? Everybody else appears that they're probably going to be okay, right? So that's how you minimize the impact. It's called risk mitigation, right? And you can keep going. And we've done this with very large companies in manufacturing. We know it works, okay? We've actually stopped 2 outbreaks so far. There might be a new one going too. Might be 3, okay?
Yeah.
So
cool.
In any case, so now if you apply another piece of this, it's also possible to put in sensors that do location services so we understand where they are. And imagine if you could do workflow analysis and understand how efficient your workers are. How long do they spend in certain areas? Are they spending too much time standing together in the same place? Are there heavy traffic areas where traffic flow crosses? Can you change the workflow and how movement goes to create a more efficient operation? Everybody's heard of Agile, and Agile is one of those things that can be applied in any part of your business, okay? Yeah. And it's reacting quickly and being lean about how you do things, okay? So that's sort of the big picture on the back end of the business. Now, on the front end of the business, you need to understand human behavior. And we've learned some really amazing things by studying human behavior. And it really comes down to what's called dwell and attraction rate. And we can imagine that we could geofence an area in your store and say, okay, here's tinctures, and here's paraphernalia, and here's edibles, and here's flour, and break those apart, and then learn somebody's browsing behavior. How many of your customers come back? How often do they come back? What do they look at? And ultimately, what do they buy? Now, one of the biggest things, as I said, the tail of this journey is not about the revenue. It's about the journey that they took to get there. Because you could actually find out that there's parts of your operation that are inefficient or not working, and we have, and be able to take and rectify those things and increase your revenue. You could also tell how effective your salespeople are from one store versus another by studying the data. So we use artificial intelligence, which is the great equalizer. And I'm going to give you a peripheral message on that. Imagine that you go to a Starbucks, because we all have familiarity with this, and one store is on a college campus, and it's got students sitting at the table working, and they hang out for an hour and a half doing homework. And then you go to a business park, and guys in suits come by, and they come in and they get their soy latte, and they're gone, right? A customer is a customer is a customer, right? But if you try and look at them and you look at them, you will see something different. Our AI sees them as customers and browsers and engagers, and we give the great equalizer so you can see the view across your whole chain and understand things that are the same across them, okay? Which includes how effective your salespeople are, surprisingly, okay? So labor optimization is really important. How busy is it time? We've all worked in a location where your manager said, Thursday, I think I need 3 people, okay? They're doing it based on intuition and experience. What if you could use data and say, well, here's your actual trends of what the traffic is. Then you can optimize your labor, have people when you need them and not when you don't, and then save money. System pretty much pays for itself if you use that by itself, but there's lots more to learn here, Okay. And you can also do promotional testing to find out if something works. Show an advertisement, see what people do. Show an advertisement, see what people do. Compare the results from the two. That's called A/B testing. And then you could find out what ads are more effective at getting people to do what you want them to do. And that's an influence measure. Okay. We're doing that with Samsung in retail. Okay. So this is what it looks like in an actual store. My favorite store actually in here in Long Beach is called The Circle. And it's similar in style to this because it's sort of this open, wandering environment where you can explore. And then they've got budistas and bud tenders that have product information and talk to you. Well, it's really great because I can go in and I can see and understand a lot about products that I don't know about. And we'll talk about that later when we get into some cannabis stories on our next trip. So yeah. If we geofence each of these areas, we can apply behavioral analytics to understanding where people go and what they do. And we not only learn who's a qualified visitor to the store, but also a qualified visitor to the area. And so each individual area becomes a little mini ecosystem, and we understand who goes to those and whether they go from this location to that location. How many people that look at tinctures also look at flower, right? Those are things that can be really interesting. And it can affect with the browsing behavior to find out whether or not something's that you think may be selling or not, and what people are actually doing and how long do they stay. And how long they stay and whether or not somebody's engaging with them is all really relevant to your business. So we got some really cool metrics that come out of this. And you kind of take a look at this and we break it down by each of the areas and as well as the whole store. And if you remember some of your, college stuff on marketing 101, you create this funnel. It's like 100-to-1 funnel for sales. You do a marketing funnel and you go all the way down to your customer drops out the bottom. And so we've created our own version of this, and it's called walk by conversion. And so we start with the people that may be in your area. It depends on the kind of store you've got, of course. People are walking by, how many come in the store, how many stay, where do they go, what do they do, how many come back. And the true measure of a store is not only getting, and there's a customer acquisition cost that you say, how do I get people in? And then how do I get them to stay? And if you do it right, you're driving foot traffic in, your promotions are working, and then you're doing things well in the store, then what you see is people coming back. And then those are your repeat visitors that keep the revenue coming in. So you keep filling the funnel and then keep everybody happy. That's how business works. So we give you the tools to see that. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think my brain is full for part one. We're going to get you back in a couple of weeks for part two for some storytelling. Any final thoughts? Because you do this every time we talk, and I'm on that committee with you. And quite frankly, I got to go take 2 aspirin.
Okay. Well, I guess my final thoughts are that it's time as we mature as an industry to kind of better understand what others in the retail space are doing and others in the supply chain are doing, and lessons learned from them as well, because they do apply. And that's part of the growth process. This is a great business to be in. It's profitable. The sky's the limit on where we can go. And we're happy to be here to help you get there.
All right. Well, thanks again for helping us build community, or I'm gonna call it an ecosystem. Let's use a little more modern word than community. But hey, we're all in this together, John. Keep it safe. Wash your hands, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everybody.